Here.
Alderman Sears.
Here.
Rise for the pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I move that we make a change to the agenda, Mayor.
On
Number
Mr.
9.
Westcoat's.
Number 9, new business, swap B and C.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So approve the agenda as amended. All right.
We do need a motion to approve the
Yeah.
amended agenda.
Make a motion, we approve agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. What do we have on number 5?
No one signed in for personal appearances, sir.
Okay. Department reports. Do we have any from Ken?
I do not believe so.
Okay. Chief Disney, have anything?
They're probably out training tonight. This is their training night.
Yeah.
Chief Dillon's report is in here. 92 calls for service, 9 citations issued, 2 arrests, 15 incidents. Chargers being a pain in the butt.
That it is.
Office remodel going all right.
It is. They're putting the carpet in tomorrow. Then the countertops will be installed the first of next week. By the end of the week, they should be up and running, and definitely want everybody to come and take a look. It's really changed the appearance, and it'll change the functionality of the police department.
Okay. Mr. Ryan, do you have?
So I've submitted all of the financial reports. Our investments continue to do well. We're almost getting ready to go over the 5% mark on our liquid rate, which once it crosses to a certain threshold, I'll lock in, and then that way we'll be able to maintain a higher rate for a year. On top of the reports that I submitted, want everybody to know that the state has finally finished their process for the nonprofit grant that they were gonna make available through ARPA. So any group, any not-for-profit that did not get funding in the initial ARPA rounds, they can now apply for funding. The state has set aside $7.5 million, and the application will be available May 31st. So that's all not-for-profits that did not get funded. Attended the Missouri City Managers Conference. Made a lot of good contacts there. One of them was with Honeywell, and actually I invited them out last week. They took a tour of all of our facilities, looking at different ways that we can either increase efficiencies or decrease some of our expenses. And so they're gonna start to put together certain programs that hopefully the savings of the program funds the program. So they took a tour of the water plant, looked at all of our machines out there. They were here for 2 or 3 hours, and then also made the recommendation to reach out to the school district, made that introduction to see if there is a way for the school district to save money as well. Animal control has been an issue, and so I started looking at animal control vehicles. New ones run $50,000 to $60,000. Used runs run anywhere between $24,000 and $40,000. Found one at auction, and we actually won the bid. And so Adrian will have an animal control vehicle to start that process. Next month, I'll bring a solution to you as to what we're going to do with the animals once we have collected. So that'll be one of the things that we can check off the to-do list.
So how much did we get that for?
10.
And it runs, we don't have to pedal it?
It's a 2000, what the interesting thing is that, this was a 2011, and it's a converted, van, into an animal control. They had another one for sale, not at auction, but for sale, that was a 2009. The 2009, they were selling it for 25,000, we got a 2011 for 10, and it's over in Lawrence, so the shipping and, I mean, we just have to go over and bring it back, so the cost to just bring it back to the city was gonna be minimal, so it really was a good deal. Wish we could've got it for less, but unfortunately, everything is just,
That's a steal.
it is, it really is. So we'll get the decal put on it, and you'll be seeing it, around town.
Cool.
Who's gonna be driving it?
So, I will take a round in it, as well as the officers that, you know, when they see, one of the biggest challenges, is that anytime PD saw a dog, you know, they were in one of their cruisers. Well, they just don't have a way to you know, you just can't toss it in the trunk, or, so they didn't have a way to safely transport it. Well, now we actually have, you know, something that's designed for that, so, it makes that process better. And then eventually we'll talk about maybe bringing somebody in on a part-time basis, you know, that wants to do it for a couple hours, or as an on-call, you know, when somebody sees something, we'll explore that.
But currently it's whoever is on duty is
Yes.
gonna have those responsibilities.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Officer Beers, are you back full-time now?
Yes,
Okay, good deal.
yep, I've been back since March 20th.
Full duty though, not limited duty now?
Nope, no longer limited.
Fine. Good to know.
Anything
And that's
else?
all I have.
Okay. All right. Public Works. Got our written report here. Guys have anything for Mark since he's here tonight?
I did just wanna say that, Ryan actually told us, but I had already noticed that you guys were working on that big water main break, and, it looked I don't know nothing about water company stuff, okay? But it looked like it was being done very professionally and very efficiently, so,
Thank you.
much appreciated.
Wish we could've got it quicker. It took like a week to get the main farmer supplies. And then we had to hold back on ordering some more materials. But, spread over about 3 weeks total to get it all said and done, but to get it isolated, we had to get digged to put valves in to get it isolated. Basically, I could discuss with Ryan, most of your towns around would contract that,
Mhm.
what we did.
Yeah.
But due to more time and experience, we narrowed into it.
And I would say if we contracted it out, it would have easily been in the $35,000 to $50,000 range.
Yeah, correct, the materials for repairs around, I think pushing around 10 grand.
Yeah, we're pretty proud of you guys.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
We also, we have the river pump issue isolated. We actually brought divers in, to check the pump. The basket that was on the intake line had actually slipped and was allowing debris to come in, which was then getting in and destroying the pump. So they will be back tomorrow.
If they're coming back 8 o'clock in the morning, put the screen back on.
So if you wanna see a diving crew, they have a pretty impressive, operation up at the river pump. So,
Pretty neat.
Cool. Yeah, I've dealt with them, this will be the 4th, 5th time I've dealt with them over the years, so already had them in my cell phone.
Very good. Of all of your many skills, having your diver certification is not one of them, huh?
No, but I know who to call.
There you go.
All right. We have anything from Tom?
I don't think he had a report.
We're without Tom for this week.
Yeah, he's out on medical.
Medical issues.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Dave, you?
June 8th, next park board meeting, 6:30. And, that's all I've got right now. high school's finishing up right now in the park, and Little League getting ready to start. That's all I got.
And if I can interject,
Sure.
on the June 8th meeting, it will be a planning session for the park. So we're gonna kind of do some vision, setting to see what they wanna see, you know, maybe even look at a 5-year kind of a master plan. So anybody that wants to attend and throw ideas out, the more the merrier.
What date? What date?
It'll be June 8th.
Is that a public meeting?
Yes.
Yes, it's 6:30.
First Thursday.
Yeah.
Here?
Yes.
Yes.
I have had somebody contact me with interested in that, so I'll let them know.
Well, and also we'll put out there if anybody's interested in maybe serving on that board. We'll probably be looking for a couple replacements.
I told him that too.
And the bill, that was introduced in this legislative session that would allow communities under 2,000 to
Where'd
go
you find it?
outside, that has been tabled. So I'm not sure if it's gonna get looked at, because the session is, if it hasn't drawn to a close, it's nearing drawn to a close, and it hasn't been voted on. So unless there's an emergency session in which that gets picked up, it probably will get kicked to the next session. So nothing's gonna happen with it in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, our state legislature has let us down this go around. Alright, moving on.
So if anybody's got ideas, send them to Burris.
Mhm.
Okay.
Alright, anything from the finance committee that we're not gonna go over tonight already?
Just that we met, I can't remember the date, I was looking through my phone to try to remember the date we met. Sometime last month we met, I was there, I just don't remember when it was. And it was a good meeting, Mr. Westcoat presented his, budget ideas to the committee, and the committee, had some questions, they were all answered, and, the committee doesn't have anything to offer for, other than the budget looks good. So,
Okay.
it was a good meeting.
Alright, everybody happy with the department reports? Moving on, consent agenda.
Make a motion that we approve regular council meeting minutes and approval of bills paid in April.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright, any unfinished business?
No, sir.
New business. Want new library members?
There was a note in there.
Yeah.
There we go. Page 80.
Alright, would you like to come up to the podium, Miss Roma? And we'll have it out.
Okay. Well, this is just our yearly meeting that we try to come to. We usually do June, but we're doing it tonight instead. We have Patsy Lemon, who has been on our board for several years now. And we hate to lose her, but this is the end of her term, and she requests not to run another 3 years. So, we have talked among our board members, and we would like to recommend Donna Six to take her place. I think most of you know her. She has moved, she's a retired teacher, moved back from Harrisonville, and is now living in Adrian. And then Diane Gregg and Linda Oldfield, I think this is their second year for the board, and so they would like to stay on the board. So we just need your approval.
Any
Motion?
discussion?
No. Motion, we accept Diane Gregg and Linda Oldfield and Darla Six for their appointments to the library board.
Second.
Before we have a vote, I'd like to say thank you, Mrs. Lemon, for your service.
I've enjoyed it. It's been about 10 years
Right
I've been
on.
on the board, so.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright,
Thank you.
thank you,
Thank you.
appreciate it. Keep up the good work, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Shoot.
Here comes the fun.
Sir, if you'd like to join us. And you may have a seat at the table, sir.
I will make it as short as possible.
I think we're already mentally prepared for a long one anyway.
No, I do it pretty quick, very honestly. I try to hit the high points and that's it.
Okay.
Start with 20, and what I'm gonna kinda do is 20 and 21, I'm gonna talk about the opinions together because they're, pretty similar in everything.
What page do you want us to start
Where
with?
we at?
This is page 1, and we'll do one on 20 and 21.
So your bound documents.
Yeah. This is the independent auditor's report. That's the big reason we come here is to issue this report. One thing I always like to make everybody understand that these are your financial statements. We don't come in and create anything. We take your information and assemble it in a manner that's acceptable under generally accepted accounting principles and government auditing standards, general auditing standards, everything else. So, they are your financial statements. We just put them in this form. Our responsibility naturally is to come here to, of course, look over everything, but also to present the opinion. If you go to page 2 on both of them, unfortunately, I said, make me some copies, and they did front and back, so it's kind of a pain, but, if you go to 2020, it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects. Respective financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities in each major fund in the city of Adrian, Missouri, as of June 30th, 2020, and the respective changes in financial position and where applicable, cash flows thereof for the fiscal year then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. All that verbiage basically means you had a clean audit report. We didn't find any, evidence of fraud, any, big misstatements or anything like that. One of the things I do like to point out is that we deal in materiality. We have to, and that's part of our auditing standards that we have to follow. There may be something that's a few dollars off and everything. We're not gonna adjust that because when you're looking at a multi-million-dollar balance sheet, probably to put it in a term that would be more acceptable and understandable, if you filled out a personal financial statement and took it to the bank to maybe buy a house or a piece of land, and you said you had $25,010 in your checking account, and you really only had $24,985, the bank's probably not gonna kick your loan out for that reason. So we look at materiality. And that's like it says here, in all material respects, your financial statements are materially correct. Down under the other matters, well, let me talk about the 2021. We had to give an adverse opinion on 2021 because of the nursing home fund. It was not audited by Bear Curtis & Dobson. And because of that, we had to give an adverse opinion. I think the financial statement in there for the nursing home fund is very correct, but, it was not audited. And so we had to give an adverse opinion on that. That doesn't mean there was an adverse opinion on the city as a whole, just on those, it affects all your business type activities because the way they group the stuff for audits, but really the only thing it affected was the nursing home fund. And that's all it was there. Going on down to the other matters, what this means in both years. We come here, there are some things that we don't apply audit procedures to is number one thing. A budget, you can't audit a budget. I mean, I guess you could, but a budget is basically an estimation of what you think's gonna happen. So, one of the things that we say there is that we've applied certain limited procedures to the required supplementary information, and not all of that stuff was audited. Now, the numbers that represent actual numbers in there were audited, so that's really what that all comes comes down to, and it deals with the budgetary stuff mainly. And then if you go to the very last paragraph, other reporting required by government auditing standards. When we do a governmental audit, we also look at your system of internal control, number one. That's the system you have in place to make sure that your assets are adequately protected, and that's assets from cash all the way down to equipment, inventoriable type parts, everything else, that you have good controls there. And we also look at your compliance with laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements. Make sure that you are not out of compliance with any of those. That's part of something we do every time we come here. And we have some reports on those later on. So now we'll go strictly to 2020. Page 4 is a statement of net position. I'm gonna kind of jump around here because you almost have to. It's very similar to what you see on page 6. However, page 6 is the old financial statements that we did prior to the advent of Governmental Accounting Standards Board, statement number 34. Pages 4 and 5 are the new financial statements after GASB 34. We call it GASB 34. And the main difference between the two is that one is basically, if you want to really get down to it, more like in line with what a business would show. Page 4, you're going to have capital assets, which are your property and equipment, and you're going to also have your long-term obligations and debt in there. Those aren't going to appear on page 6 because that's not the way we used to report it. So above and beyond all that, you can see that the total assets of the government were $15,937,392, $13,061,555 of that were the total assets of the business type activities, which are going to be the water fund, the sewer fund, the solid waste fund, and the nursing home fund. And the governmental activities represented $2,875,837. Total liabilities for the city were $3,227,111. The majority of that is in the business type activities, $3,136,095, and the rest of $91,016 was in the governmental activities. Then your total net position, this is kind of a measure. If we were talking in business terms, or maybe talking in terms of you giving a financial statement to your banker, your net worth, or your retained earnings, or your equity, whatever you want to call it. Total for the city was $12,710,281, and total net position of the business type activities was $9,925,460, and the remainder of $2,784,821 was in the governmental activities. The thing I'd like to point out is a big measure of the health of any entity is its debt to equity ratio. As you can see here, you're about 4-to-1, which is very good for a city. It's almost what I would even call exceptional for a small city, because a lot of times small cities have a harder time with that type of stuff than the big cities do, so just wanted to point that out. Your biggest liabilities, naturally, in the business type activities are the long-term obligations, your bonds, your capital lease obligations, and everything else. And you have those broke out into the non-current portions and the current portion. Current portions is what's going to mature in the next 12 months. The long-term is after 12 months. Okay, going to page 5. If you have a question, holler at me. So, on to page 5, this is a statement of activities. This is also a GASB 34 statement. It is going to differ from page 7 in the fact that there is depreciation and interest expense recognized here. Depreciation is not recognized on page 7, and total debt service instead of just interest is recognized on page 7. You can see the total change in net position of the city for the year was a positive $60,724. $32,904 of that were in the business type activities. $27,820 were in the governmental activities. The total expenses, one of the big things you're going to see between here and page 7 too, Expenses are on top, and they're listed first. Governmental Accounting Standards Board thought that their reasoning behind that is that patrons of a district or patrons of a city, citizens, whatever you wanna call them, they're far more interested in how you spend the money than how much money you take in, so, and that's why that's put there. You also see there's charges for services to offset some of those expenses. Not everything has those charges for services. Naturally, business activities all do. In the general government, most of it is general revenues that you'll see down below in the governmental activities column that aren't specifically tied to one thing. They may be earmarked for one thing, but they are not an actual charge for service. You also had some operating grants in 2020, and that was some more revenues that came in, probably all from COVID, as most things were in that year. So, hope we don't, it'd be nice to get the grant money, not have to go through that again, so. Okay, going on to, page 6, like I said, now these are the old statements. These are just dealing only with your current stuff. So this doesn't have any long-term debt in it, doesn't have any fixed assets or anything else. And you can see your total fund balances were $1,534,167. That's the key amount to look for. Your total liabilities and deferred inflows of resources were, about 69,000 something. So once again, your so-called debt to equity there is excellent. You had total assets of $1,603,823. You can also see that that's mainly your cash and investments. When we say investments, the GASB determined a number of years ago that some CDs are investments. I totally disagree with that, but that's what those are. Your restricted cash, your receivables, prepaid insurance, and inventory. Now, you remember I was talking about that differs from page 4. Well, down below ties that all together. You have to add in capital assets, you have to add in property tax revenue as it's earned, you have to take out compensated absences and long-term liabilities. Now, this is just for the governmental funds. So that's how that ties back to the other page. Going on to page 7, this is the old-time statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. Once again, there is no interest expense in here. Debt service is 100%, capital outlay is 100%. The capital outlay in the other statement was capitalized and depreciated. So you can see total revenues were $975,645. Total expenditures were $929,854. The excess of revenues over expenditures was $45,791. There were also some transfers in, giving you a net positive change in fund balance of $57,581. So once again, that's good. You always want that number to be positive. Going on to page 8, kind of the same thing. This ties page 7 and page 5 back together. Like I said, you've got capital outlays less depreciation expense. That if depreciation expense is more, the net of those has to be subtracted out. Deferred property taxes, the decrease in those has to be subtracted out. And then you add back in the payment on capital leases because that's recognized as a debt reduction on that statement. Page 9 is the statement of net position. You might call it a statement of net worth of your proprietary funds. You can see the various funds across the top, the water fund, the sewer fund, the nursing home fund, the solid waste fund. The total of all those had total assets of $13,061,555. The total liabilities were $3,136,095, and the total net position was $9,925,465. All the funds had a positive net position, so that's good. Going on to page 10, this is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in net position. Kind of be like an income statement or a profit or loss. As you can see, the with the exception of the solid waste fund because of transfers going in and out of it. And those are actually de facto transfers. Years ago, somebody decided the solid waste fund would be a proprietary fund. If you all ever want to, you can change that because the money is actually collected and everything it's collected through the general fund. And so that's what those transfers are. They're actually de facto transfers because the money ends up in the general fund. So, but you can move that to the general fund. It's pretty much a break-even type of fund. So if you all would want to, effective maybe July 1st, you could move that to the general fund. It is not a true big-time money maker. You know,
Yeah, everything we collect gets paid out.
yeah. So, you know, that's something you can do if you want to. As you can see over to the far right, you had a positive change in net position of $32,904. That was hit pretty hard. As you can see, the nursing home had a fairly large loss. A lot of that loss is depreciation, 97,000 of it, but I don't know that I really want to discuss the nursing home. It's
It's a done deal.
yeah, it's a done deal. If you go to page 11, this is a statement of cash flows. One thing I always like to point out to governmental units, you can have a net income or, you know, positive net revenues over expenses, but you can have a negative cash flow. You can also have a positive cash flow and show that you had a loss. A lot of things figure into that, you know, if your receivables and payables went up or down, if you spent a lot of money for capital assets, things like that. You know, it's very misleading sometimes because this can be very skewed and I've seen it many times where maybe a bond issue comes out and, you know, the last month of the fiscal year, but then there's no expenditures for it until the following year. And so, you know, it can look kind of silly sometimes, but that's the way we have to do it. The good thing is that you had a net increase in cash of $164,547. The nursing home fund had a big loss, but like I say, payables and receivables and things like that figure in there. It really only lost $54,768 in cash for the year ended June 30th, 2020. One thing I'd like to point out, that would have been far more had you not got the CARES relief funds, because that represented $267,482. So, going on to the notes to the financial statements, I will not go over every page of this. I hope you thank me for that. I do want to hit some notes that I think are important. If you go to page 17, cash and cash equivalents, there is a statute the state of Missouri has that all monies of a governmental unit have to either be collateralized, well, insured. Most of them are going to jump out of that because of the low amount of FDIC insurance. And if anything that's not insured needs to be collateralized by government securities. What that means is it's kind of reverse of what we normally would think of as collateral. If we go and borrow money to buy a house, that house is collateral for that loan. Banks have to invest money to make money and everything. So what they do then is they pledge a portion of their governmental securities that they own. They're usually treasury bills. They can also be FHLB and things like that. They pledge those to the city. So if that bank would go under, it's just like the same thing if you would default on a home loan, they can, you know, they have to pay that money straight out of that collateral to you. The good thing here is that you guys are 100% collateralized. That's what you want to look at. I tell everybody, most banks are pretty good about watching it. The one thing I do like to point out to cities is always look at it in December and January, because that's when your tax collections come in. You can go over that amount temporarily there. Most banks will make up for that, but it's always a good idea to keep an eye on that. Going to page 18, you have restricted let me talk about investments. You have certificates of deposit. If they mature more than 90 days after the end of the financial statement date, they become investments. They are not true investments, they are strictly certificates of deposit, just something our people make us do. I will say on record, I think it's insane, but, to me, an investment bears a large risk of loss, no matter what. Certificates of deposit don't, because they're, they are secured and collateralized, just like your cash accounts are, so, but we don't have any
We have
choice.
to put that on the line.
Restricted cash, I won't hit that too hard. The majority of your restricted cash is in the, debt service reserve and retirement accounts, in the water fund, as you can see. The outer road maintenance does have $52,994, and then the water fund, in addition to those bond accounts, also has customer deposits that are restricted. So that makes up all your restricted cash. Accounts receivable, you can see that they net out to be $375,671 through the various funds. There is an allowance for doubtful accounts. What that allowance is that was established a number of years ago to recognize the fact that you're probably not gonna collect 100% of everything that you have an accounts receivable for, and to bring those receivables down to what in accounting terms is called net realizable value. If the city would stop today, you're more likely to get 375,000 than you are to get 427,000, so.
Right.
So it's net realizable value. You also have the same thing down below in your taxes and other receivables. There are a lot of tax receivables that you have. Sales taxes, they come in a month late, actually 2 months late, but from an accounting standpoint, they're a month late. The motor vehicle fuel and fuel taxes, they all come in a month late. And the franchise taxes, most of those are a month late, and sometimes 4 or 5. And your property taxes, there's always property tax receivable, and we do have an allowance for those that was established a number of years ago too. The other account receivable down at the bottom, if I remember right, some of it was pasture rent, and I can't remember what the other thing was, but that was what represented 11.5. Okay, going on to page 20, let's go to page 20. We'll kind of skip all that, because we're gonna hit the same stuff back here. The debt of the business type activities, let's go to page 20. The governmental fund had, one lease purchase outstanding of $10,537 at June 30th of 20. You can see in the little schedule down below that, for that to be paid out in full, it would take, with interest, it would take $10,970. Sorry, I probably should have known that. Going on to page 22, this is the big one. We have the bonds payable, June 30th, 20, they were $2,505,100. If you keep those to maturity, it will take another $172,946 to pay them off, for a total of $2,678,046. And those will be paid off in 2031. You also have a note payable, the energy loan that was used to purchase solar panels. That's broken down below, where you can see that the total principal and interest to pay that off will be $23,244 for the governmental funds and $96,506 for the business type, because that liability was divided into the different funds. Capital assets, wasn't a lot of activity there. In the governmental activities, there was $48,000 added in new. There was some roofs, I think it was roofs put on the buildings, and some equipment of $26,000. You can see your total depreciable assets are $2,808,578 in the governmental funds, less the depreciation gives you a net value of $1,272,014. I'll point this out, don't worry, I won't do it again in 21. This is all based on historical cost. We are not allowed to use any fair market value type of things within the capital assets unless something is donated to the city. If somebody came along and donated a piece of land to you, then that would be whatever the fair market value was on that day. But everything else is at its purchase value less depreciation. And page 24 just shows you how the depreciation expense was divided among the governmental departments. You had general government, street, fire, public safety, and park. And then because of how big the next page was, I had to put a note in there to continue on the following page. The next page starts the capital assets of the business type activities, sewer, water, and solid waste fund. And you can see that sewer's total assets were $1,593,177. As is normal, the largest amount of assets was in the water fund, $9,569,781, and the solid waste fund only has $21,000, so there's not much there, and they're about depreciated out. And the nursing home fund had depreciable assets of $3,131,502. Total accumulated depreciation was $2,100,731, leaving you net depreciable assets in the nursing home fund of $1,031,771. Let's see. The only other thing on page 27, traffic fines. There's a statute that was passed because of Max Creek, Missouri. I don't know if anybody knows about that, but,
Oh, yeah.
you know, Max Creek was funding most of their city through, speeding tickets. And so that was finally addressed, and, I don't really know what happens if you go over the 20%. My understanding is you're supposed to send it to the state, but I understand there's also a way to get out of that too, so I don't know. But anyway, you guys weren't anywhere near that, so no problem. The only other thing, subsequent events, I had to report that you closed and sold the nursing home. Budget and actual expenses start on page 28. You actually exceeded the budget in the general fund. You know, one of the things I'd like to tell everybody, if you exceed the budget, the state's not gonna come down and throw anybody in jail or fine you or anything else. That budget, you know, the main thing, you're supposed to amend the budget as you go to make sure that you do not expend any more than you budget. A big reason they passed that law was, number one, to protect board members and everything. There was a case, gosh, I don't know, you may even remember it, 20 years ago or so, where a school district went broke up in northern Missouri. And if they can determine that the school board members or a board of aldermen or a city council was very negligent in the way they spent money and kept exceeding the budget, they can actually go back against the board members. And so that, you know, that was a big reason the budget law was passed, above and beyond the normal reasons that you should budget anyway. But they're not gonna come down and do anything to you. I've always said I would rather see a governmental entity use the budget, or in other words, I can see where they've amended the budget numerous times during the year and still break the budget law, than do what a lot of cities and schools do. They meet on June 29th or December 30th, and they adjust their budget to their actual expenditures. I don't think you're really using the budget properly when you're doing that, so, yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. You exceeded the budget in the water, or you did not exceed the budget in the water fund, you were okay there. I think that if I remember right, the general was the only one you did it in, so.
Exceeded 68,981.
What's that?
We exceeded 68,981. Page 28.
Yeah, in the general fund, yeah, 68,981. So, And I think a lot of that was probably mainly due to, maybe the timing of some expenditures. I think that had a lot to do with it, so.
Salaries.
Salaries was a big thing, so.
Water under the bridge.
You did not exceed the budget. I don't think you did any other funds. So that was the only fund you had that problem in. Going on to page 33. Trying to get through this quick. As I said before, we come here and look at your system of internal control and your compliance with laws and regulations. That starts on page 33. We had one material weakness, that's 2020-001 that I'll get to later. I will tell you, we have that material weakness in almost every government we do because small governments cannot have adequate segregation of duties. It's absolutely impossible. If you hired enough people to have adequate segregation of duties, you'd be broke pretty quick. You do have great secondary controls, just like up there. You guys are reviewing the bills. I've sat in many governmental, city and school audit to, when I present the audit and you got a council member, why'd we pay this guy $20,000 or why'd we spend $6,000 here? That's a great secondary control. One of that kind of segues into one thing I always want to tell everybody. One of the biggest areas that there has been problems within the governmental realm is credit cards and debit cards and stuff like that. If you have a credit card, make sure you get that statement in your board packet every month, because as I tell everybody, going through the bills and you've got blah, 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 Visa, $12,000, that doesn't tell you anything. And a little town not too far from here, a few years ago, we asked the bookkeeper for the credit card statements, so she couldn't find them. Well, then she found two, so we started looking at those. Well, she was getting her hair done and buying clothes and everything else. So we said, well, we've got to have the other ones, and if we don't, we will have to go to the board to get them. About 2 hours later, she turned in her resignation. It ended up, she was also, once we found that out, we started looking at other places. They paid bi-weekly, like a lot of places do. I take that back, they paid semi-monthly like a lot of places do. She was taking 3 paychecks a month, and it ended up being $86,000, so, but we also, at a school district a number of years ago, found out that a board member had paid about $12,000 for his son's rehearsal dinner at one of the casinos, so, it's, but once again, they weren't getting the credit card statements, they were simply getting the things that we're paying this much, boom, so I always like to throw that out there because I think it's a good thing. I talked about segregation of duties on page 35. I'm not going to go through that. You guys do have good secondary controls. I do think you also need to have some people cross-train on the accounting process in case somebody would get sick or anything else. That's pretty standard in any job. I think you've got a written procedures manual all done now and everything. Written risk assessment number 2 down there. This is something that we have a really hard time getting people to do. It's not is in no way a, long, arduous thing to do. Basically, you guys could sit down in a meeting and take 15, 20 minutes and come through that. And what you really do in a risk assessment, you're gonna say, you got some different areas to look at, but number one is, how could somebody steal something from us? What do we have that's the least protected? And what can we do to respond to that? The other thing you need to look at, and I had this with an ambulance district, part of their risk assessment also needs to be, how can somebody get hurt here? And they had a person that had lifted a 600-pound person and messed their back up real bad, so they ended up buying these things called power lifts, where they kind of slide the person over on it and it lifts them and everything. But what you're looking at there is you're looking at areas that where you maybe see a problem that, you know, somebody could get hurt, there's a public safety, danger, you know, then protecting your assets, be it cash, your fixed assets, everything else. And it doesn't really take that long. Just put it in your minutes and, you know, do it, put it in your minutes and document it. Then I don't ever have to say anything about it, so. But it's a good, you should do it anyway, you know, it's a very good thing because, you know, you ought to do it annually because things change, you know. 25 years ago, the internet wasn't used that much, it's used all the time now. Cell phones weren't used that much, they're used all the time now, so. And, you know, there can be information even on a city-issued cell phone that, you know, may have somebody, you know, there may be an email that, you know, would violate somebody's privacy or something. So, you know, those are just things to look at. And I won't go over that one again. And I'm gonna go over these findings. I won't go over them in 21 because they're the same for both years. So, this will be significantly shorter for 21. The financial and accounting reporting, Ryan has fixed this. The accounting software was, for lack of a better word, ungodly complex. One of the things I've noticed with that company and other places, if they really didn't get a whole lot of input from the bookkeeper and stuff, what they would do is they would come in and set up a fund for each separate account. So it was almost impossible to pull a general fund financial statement together because every account had its separate fund. It was, and it was very, very tough. As you can see, that was all taken care of. The other thing is the budget was not even entered into the city's accounting software. I see that a lot too. I don't think that's wise because you can push one button and do a budgetary comparison. You know, why aren't you doing it? It should be. And a lot of times you can even do it as long as you've got the account numbers and everything. I've seen a lot of systems where you can actually do it on an Excel spreadsheet and they're just integrated within the system. I don't know if you can in the new one, but,
In the new one. Yeah, you can, there's certain,
Yeah.
Excel inputs into it,
Yeah.
yes.
that's what I'm saying, you know,
Yeah.
so, you know, it's really not that bad. Then the budget on page 37, I talked about that. That was a compliance issue, and I think that's been taken care of too. The prior year's stuff, I'm not gonna go over all that. That was what happened for June 30, 19. A couple of those things were no longer a finding, and so I don't think there's any issue going over that again. So let's go back to 21, and I will try to get out of here.
And gentlemen, just so that you're aware, I take all the findings and the deficiencies, I take that to heart. And those are the first things that after an audit, I wanna have fixed, because I appreciate that, I don't wanna see deficiencies, but those are opportunities for us to improve. And so I always put those are all high priority for me.
I think we already had most of these deficiencies fixed before the audit was complete.
Yeah, you did. And here's the other thing. Just because we find a deficiency or anything, doesn't mean anybody's failed or anything. You know, because I have some people that are just like crushed, and I'm like, you know, hey, things happen, you know, and things change. You know, so I like Brian's attitude, you know, take them as suggestions to improve instead of, you know, now, you know, naturally, if you got a theft or fraud thing, that's a little bit different, you know, but we don't have that here. So, you know.
So BG, before you jump in,
Yeah.
so you mentioned earlier on page 2, the adverse opinion. So are we in compliance with the state? Does that adverse opinion rating give us a black eye, anything like that?
No, and it'll be fixed by the end of this year, you know, so, you know, the adverse opinion is, I wish they found a better way to use it instead, or better terminology for it instead of adverse, because it sounds really bad. But, you know, here's the thing. Your financial information was still collected for the nursing home. It's in there. It just wasn't audited. I don't, you know, I tied everything back to bank statements, you know, pretty much as a whole. I don't think there's really anything missing there. Now, can I say it's 100% correct? No, but, you know, there was a pretty good trail there, and
You're within the margin of error.
yeah, I don't really think now, I can't say 100%. I can never say 100% that everything's exactly right. I mean, you know,
Cause you're working off of what we can give you.
yeah,
What
well,
you
and the
find.
other thing is, you know, it's like somebody said, you know, you say there's no theft, what if somebody stole an ink pen? Well, you know, yeah, so.
There's also a significant difference between a financial statement audit
Right.
and a forensic audit.
Yeah.
I mean, you're looking for different things,
Sure.
so.
And because of some of the stuff that happened, I kind of did a semi-forensic audit, and, you know, found some late payments and stuff, but I do not think any money was taken or anything like that. I feel very confident in that, so.
So, in your opinion, it's not worth the energy, the effort to go back and retrace anything with the nursing home, wouldn't get anything from it?
You wouldn't get anything from it, it still wasn't audited,
Right.
you know, and the other side, even if you got Bear Kurtz and Dobson to come back and audit it, they wouldn't even be able to give you a good opinion because it's too late. You know, too much time's passed, there's records that are probably gonna be not available now and everything else, so. 2021, I'll kinda hit everything in total here, cause I know you guys got other stuff to do.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go over each fund and everything else, I knew you'd like that. Total assets were $15,158,702. Total liabilities were $2,723,078, leaving you a net position of $12,435,624. Once again, you have a very excellent debt to equity ratio. Going on to page 5, this is where it will be kind of ugly. The nursing home lost a substantial amount of money in the period of time it was open in the fiscal year 2021. You can see your total change in net position was a negative $274,658. And as we get over to the other pages, you'll see how the nursing home affected that.
Thanks, COVID.
What's that?
I said, thanks, COVID.
Yeah.
Good scapegoat.
Yeah.
If you go to page 6, this once again is just the old style statements that deal with what we call basically current type of resources. And you can see the total liabilities and deferred inflow of resources was about $77,900. Your total assets $1,822,541. So once again, with fund balances of $1,744,000, that's pretty exceptional. So I think that's great. Once again, down below you can see how page 6 ties back into page 4. On page 7, this is the governmental funds. This is the old style statement. Typically we hide something when it says debt service, but sometimes when things are paid off, I like to leave it in there just so it shows that there wasn't any. You can see that your excess of revenues over expenditures was $200,178. You also had transfers in, once again, from the solid waste thing. So you had a net change in fund balance of $210,477, which is excellent. And page 8 ties all that back to, or page 8 ties page 7 back to page 5. Now, this is where we get into the trickier stuff, starting on page 9. At the end of the year, the nursing home had mainly fixed assets. There was a little bit of cash left, and there was some prepaid insurance left at that point in time. Current liabilities, there was an amount due to other funds that was going to basically be due to the general fund where the city's AMNH fund resided. And there were some accounts payable of $80,902. feel somewhat confident in that number. That's probably the hardest thing to tie down was the accounts payable. So, everybody else looks pretty good. Actually, the nursing home has a positive, net position, but most of it's sitting in hard assets. There's not anything liquid there really, so that's the problem there. All the other funds look great. So your total assets for your business type activities were $12,160,227. Your total liabilities were $2,634,000, leaving $2,634,026, leaving you a net position or an equity of $9,526,201, which is still excellent, even though we have a nursing home. This is where it gets real ugly, page 10. I went over those numbers pretty close. I think the nursing home lost close to $700,000 in that period of time, from what I could tell. So that was a lot of money. COVID hit at a bad time. That 697, I'm pretty confident on because I can tie it back to the way cash increased and decreased, receivables increase and payables increase and decrease. So, I think it's very, 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 I think it's materially correct. That's a lot of money, but, the sewer fund, if you look down at the bottom, it shows a change in that position, negative $107,199. Once again, that money is joint, the water sewer funds all in one. It has a lot to do with just reporting the cash balance. I think really the thing you probably want to look at up there really is more like the number before the transfers. Sewer fund did have a positive income there. Water fund did well. Solid waste fund did its normal small amount. But once again, the nursing home pretty well drove everything down. So if you go to page 11, you can kind of see, number one, the nursing home started out with $557,599. And it's kind of a little bit misleading because some of that dollar amount is in the general thing, but I account for it here just because of some of the expenses that were paid out of there. But you can see that cash went down significantly there. And that further leads to, like I said, what I would say the loss was. If you look down below, you can also see, a lot of the payables. Once it was closed, you start paying stuff off. And so, you can see that your payables decreased, about $248,580. It's just one of those things. It was a bad deal. Overall, the cash and the other funds was okay. The sewer fund was down $67,976, but once again, that's got to do with the transfer. If you don't really have a separate sewer fund or water fund, that gets very hard to track. So, but everything else looked okay. Going to the notes, I'm gonna hit this stuff real quick. Cash and cash equivalents, once again, you guys were 100% insured and collateralized. You didn't have any exposure there. So that's on page 17. That's a Missouri law that your money has to be protected. Looking at page 18, your restricted cash was $803,951. Those bond reserve funds are typically not accounted for within the city's books. I think you account for the transfers you make to the bond trustee, but they are not accounted for as an asset on the city books. But it's easy to get that stuff. if you look at total receivables on page 19, the net realizable value was $124,341. I had no idea, or no ability to tell whether there was anything receivable for the nursing home. Nothing really came in after about, March? There was some little stuff that trickled in, but, maybe even April, but it wasn't, it wasn't much, and I don't know if anything came in subsequent.
There were other things that, because we closed it, we were no longer eligible for.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yes, that is correct.
When you close it down, you're not eligible for it, so I knew that was coming. Down below, receivables in the general fund were $104,312. Sales tax is a big chunk of that, and I'm sure that, you all were like every other city, that when Dollar General moved in, your sales tax jumped dramatically, so it's been great for small towns, from what I can see. Now, I might get somebody argue with that, but I don't know. Long-term debt, governmental activities at the end of the year, it was $37,596, that's on page 20. You had some lease purchases that were almost paid off, they will be paid off by now. The Division of Energy balance was $18,352, and then compensated absences is $13,890. Compensated absences, what that means is if the city stopped right then and there, what you owe people for vacation and holiday time, sick time and everything, that's what that number would be. Business type activities, the water and sewer bonds were $2,250,800. The business type activities portion of the Division of Energy solar panel loans was $76,110, and compensated absences were $19,185. Let's go on to page 22, the long-term debt on the bonds. We'll take $2,389,553 to pay off. Kind of already hit on what the energy loan balances were, so, but it'll take $83,628 out of the business type funds to retire that, and $20,163 out of the general fund. Capital assets, on page 23, wasn't much happening. Once again, there was I think, truck sold. Is that what it was? I believe it was a truck, yeah, $15,000. So there wasn't really anything there, big additions. Going on to page 24, once again, there's some small stuff on the sewer fund, and some small stuff in the water fund. Solid waste fund didn't buy anything, so not much going on there. In the Dricky one that's on page 25, you had those assets sitting there, it's all sold and gone, so it's water under the bridge. Might be murky water, but it's water under the bridge, so.
That is a good characterization, sir.
So really, not much else there. Once again, if you go to page 26, you were substantially under the 20% threshold on fines and forfeitures. You barely busted the budget on page 27 in the general fund, $7,279. Wasn't a whole lot, but you did bust it again. In the water fund on page 28, you were in budget compliance. You were in budget compliance on the sewer fund and on the solid waste fund, so you didn't have anything there. There wasn't anything different as far as the findings, so I'm not gonna go over all those again. Now, I did issue a management letter, and I'll just go over some of the stuff there. Most of this stuff's already been taken care of. Number one, the excessive bank accounts. I used to do this audit 30 years ago. I screamed and yelled about it then. You've got too many bank accounts. I'm a big believer in the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. The more bank accounts you have, the more opportunities there are for fraud, irregularities, things like that. Like I said, there wasn't any of that, but the more of them you have, the more that opportunity, because you can start moving money back and forth and everything else. The other thing is, it's an accounting nightmare, you know, so, and, Brian and you all have taken care of a lot of that. I know you guys have taken care of this. There was a lot of outstanding checks that had been there for more than 3 years. Some of them were old. You know, you might say, why didn't you do anything about it? I can't. That can only be done upon a vote of the city council. I can't say, we're gonna do this with these outstanding checks. It's just not something I'm able to do. I would be making a management decision, and I couldn't issue an audit report. Bank transfers, that was one of the things that I did the first day I was here, was found out how much money you could get over into your general fund and other accounts. Those need to be monitored. The city's cashing, you know, from 2019 to 2020, the city's cash increased $273,000. Shouldn't have been any reason for anything being paid late, or not thinking you had enough money to pay something, or delaying paying it and everything else. You have all these sales tax funds. All you have to do is prove that you spent whatever you collected in that sales tax money. Anything above and beyond that, you can spend. So here would be an easy way to say it. Park sales tax fund. If the city actually, okay, if you collected, I'm just gonna throw a number out, even number. If you collected $25,000 in park sales tax fund, park sales tax funds, I can't talk, man. I've been talking too much. And the city spent $25,000. Move all that money out of that account, because you've already spent as much as you needed to. All you have to prove is that you spent whatever was levied for that sales tax. And that was one of the big problems with some of those sales tax funds had just huge amounts of money in them. And yet over here, you know, you're showing the cash balances being low and everything. I mean, I don't think that was going on here, I know it wasn't. I've seen that happen where the administrator or whatever thinks that he has too spendy of a council or a board of aldermen, and he's trying to make it look like, you know, well, we don't have any money, because he's afraid they're gonna spend it all. That's not right either, but I've seen that. Here, it just wasn't done. Now, the other side of that is, whoever your bookkeeper is, or even Ryan, unless you give him that explicit, you know, ability to do that, money should never be moved from one fund to the other without council approval, ever. A new bank account should never be opened without council approval. A bank account should never be closed without council approval. So always remember that, you know. The bookkeeper can't just look at it and say, well, you know, I'm gonna move, we're short here, I'm gonna move it over there. She's really not, you know, doing something that she should do, and the council has to, or the alderman council, whatever you wanna call it, has to vote on that to do that and approve it. That's a great, we get back to internal controls, that's an incredible control. You know, you're not gonna move money unless we all know about it. And, you know, that's, you should get copies of most of the bank statements. If you see there's a transfer that you didn't approve, you ought to be questioning it, you know, so. This wasn't a big one, I had to report it. There was 1 month they were behind and they didn't make a contribution to the water depreciation replacement account. It got eventually made, but you know, that was, and then the other thing, I know there was some issues with, you may have to help me. Certain things got cut off, or were gonna get cut off because they hadn't been paid, some utility type of things.
Health insurance did get shut off.
Yeah. Here's one thing. You just have to adopt you know, something that says you approve those things being automatically drafted out of your bank account. That's all you gotta do. You don't have to sit and write a check for every one of those things. Utilities and things like that, I think it's a real smart thing just to have it taken out. You just have to have, if you're getting the information in your financial statements and your list of bills, it's gonna be in there anyway. But I would suggest, especially with insurance, to have it automatically drafted. I would also recommend it for utility and phone bills too. It's, you know, you're given approval to do it, and it's no different than giving approval to write a check, so that's something I would, you know, that stops that from ever happening, so. But I think Ryan's doing an excellent job. He gave me some money to say that earlier. I'm joking. No, I think he's doing an excellent job, and, you know, I think this is, number one, the city's not in bad shape. The nursing home was just a bad thing. COVID hurt a lot of nursing homes. The other thing is, nursing homes in small towns are closing at an alarming rate across the country. Prescott closed over in, you know, Prescott Country View. I think one over by Clinton somewhere, didn't they close too? Deepwater, or I don't remember where it was, but, it's very hard to, you know, number one, it's hard to find help right now. Number two, everything's expensive. So, you know, and then COVID totally upset the world, so. I won't go over the water reports, they're just pretty matter of fact,
But we're all trued up with the water board and everything, we've got the
Actually,
documentation we need.
what they wanna do is they wanna wait until the 2022 audit is complete,
and I should have that in a few weeks.
and, then that.
The most up-to-date stuff.
They have all of the water audits, they've looked at them, and they decided that, once we have the 2022 numbers, then we'll sit down and we'll do the true up.
Troy's in a better mood.
Well, everybody is,
Good.
the information's been well received, and the water board is happy with what the city is doing and how we're communicating with them, so that relationship. The one thing we do need to, reinstitute is the, biannual meeting.
Right.
With the board, and so, but other than that, they're happy.
Any questions for me?
Thank you, sir.
Good job.
Sure appreciate it, Eugene.
Well, I'm sorry it took so long. I try to make it as short as possible, but I also want to make sure that I hit things that you guys need to know too. So I appreciate this very much, and I'll see you again here pretty quick.
Absolutely. Thank you,
All
sir.
right, thanks. You guys have a great evening.
You too.
And it already got better, didn't it?
Alright. Now we're gonna do loggers retirement.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I do wanna say on record one more time, that was the 2021 audit, and almost every single thing has been fixed already.
Yeah.
We're 2 years removed from that, and we've made a lot of progress as a city, financially, and in financial practices, so greatly in part to you, thank you.
Well, you know, the one thing I will say is that even though that the city was over budget in those 2 years, that's kind of an impressive thing considering that the budget was never entered into the software. So they were never reconciling back against the budget. So it was probably more fluky than anything else.
Just guessing.
Well, it just,
Good guess.
the budget got entered into that software in August of 2022, when I entered it. So it had never been entered in the previous 5 years and that was so that I could generate those budget to actual reports for you, which, again, your reports are only as good as the information that you put in.
Right.
So,
Yvonne, thank you for being a trooper through all of that transition.
I've got a lot more gray hair now.
So let's talk about loggers. So the city has had the loggers conversation a couple times before. I reached out to them, for a couple different reasons. We are in an environment now, a workplace environment to where attracting and retaining staff is becoming more critical, than ever before. Loggers is one of those things that help, especially smaller cities, compete to retain qualified staff as well as to attract qualified staff when our staff starts to retire. There are many small communities that don't offer loggers. So this is, if we adopted this, it's a feather in our cap, and it will help us to attract that talent moving forward. Loggers is a pension plan. It's operated in the state of Missouri. So it covers city governments, fire districts, county government. Yep, absolutely. And basically, the general premise is that there's a contribution made, and that it's a formula that years of service at a certain rate kind of calculates what your payment would be. The philosophy is that your logger's payment, if you're here for a long period of time, your logger's payment plus your Social Security equals, try to get to 100% of what your pay used to be, is kind of what the philosophy is, and just different levels set at different rates. So what I had them do is I gave them all of our salary information. They kicked it to an actuary who then crunched numbers that said, based on years of service at this rate, this is what it would take to become a member of loggers. So instead of giving you the 175-page document, if you'll pull this page out of your folder, loggers has different levels. It's a stable page. Yep. The entry level to loggers is L1. And so if you look at this page, the top page is for the general division. So basically, the way that it would look for us is everybody's under general, then there's police, and since we don't have fire's not included. So it's basically just two different divisions for us. So our actuarial accrued liability at the L1 level at 25% is $238,585. And so what that does is, when they look at your years of service, you can either come in at 25% of your years of service, 50%, 75%, or 100%. The closer you get to 100, the more your liability is. So what I did is I looked at the 25% entry point, which, so for somebody who's been here for 40 years, that accounts for 10 years worth of service. We've also had other retirement plans in place along those times as well. So for the city, what that means is, for us to enter at the L1 level, it's $3,362 a month would be our contribution. Now, what we're matching almost $2,000 a month now. So it's more money, but it's not excessively more than what we're currently contributing. And then as people start to get more years of service, our match goes up. So, is everybody comfortable with the groundwork there? Okay. So for the general at L1, it's $3,362.75
Where are we at now
regarding,
the loggers?
We don't have all these.
we don't have loggers.
Oh, that's why.
Yes.
I thought we were. I thought
Well, it's been
they had been.
it's been
before.
addressed a couple times. Well, see, and once you become part of loggers, you stay part of loggers.
Yeah, it was presented about 4 years ago.
Yeah, and the challenge and I don't know if the questions weren't asked right, or if there was just a misunderstanding of it. When you see, a total of $238,000, you're like, oh my gosh, that's way too much money. But they let us finance that over 30 years. So that unfunded liability gets stretched, and that just becomes part of our payment. Now, we can pay that off sooner, or we can take that 30 years to pay that off. And so our contribution would be $3,362 or $1,467. Now, if we go to the L3 level, which is that next level up, our accrued liability goes from $238 to $298. So basically what it does is it increases the payment to go to that from L1 to L3 by $1,100 a month is how much it would increase in both the police and the general. When I proposed the budget for this next year, the budget numbers include loggers at the L1 level. So that is already factored into the budget for your consideration, assuming we want to move forward. If we don't move forward, I'll take that out of the budget.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You already said this, but I just wanna make sure I heard it right. We already pay into retirement fund,
That is correct.
how much?
It's
They give a monthly rate,
so roughly around $2,000.
so this is gonna replace that.
That is correct.
So you're looking at, if we went L1, you're looking at an increase of less than $1,500 a month. Less than $1,000 a month.
Well, between the police and the other, so it would be,
Okay, so I had it about right in my head.
well, 1362 plus the police, so 1467.
Okay, so about $1,500 a month. So if we went L3, we'd be looking at an increase compared to what we already pay. We'd be looking at an increase of about 2,500, 2,600 basically,
Well,
per
actually,
month.
if we go with the L3, between the police and the general, we're looking at roughly about, 2,700 would be the increase
Okay,
to go to L3.
all right. And so, and I'm actually on loggers, so I know a little bit about it, but I know like how it pertains to me, so I don't know everything about it. So, the L1 benefit is, I assume this is all at age 50, no, it's 55 for police and public safety. So it's 60 for general employee and 55. So you're vested after 5 years, right? Or
That is
are we
correct.
buying investment when we,
So when we actually do the 25%, so what they would do and the way that it would work is so let's take, if I can use you, sir. So Mark's been here the longest, so we would take his time, so roughly, let's say 40 years. And so he would get 25%, we would buy that, so we would buy 10 years. Now, he has to be here from the time that we implement loggers, he has to be here an entire year
To get
before
this.
he can pull that time in.
Okay.
That's correct. Anybody who hasn't been here in that time, they have to put in 5 years in order to earn it.
and then once you're vested in loggers, so like if a new employee starts here, they work here 5 years,
Mhm.
they're vested in loggers. If they quit the next day, whatever's been paid into their loggers account up to that point remains there until they reach their age of retirement, which if they're a general employee, it's 60, if they're police or fire, it's 55.
That's correct.
We wouldn't do rule of 80 because that's L other stuff, but, okay, so the difference between L1 and L3, correct me if I'm wrong, 1% means, L1 is 1% for life, so 1% is, they take the best 3 of the last 5 years, they take an average of your yearly income, and then they pay you 1% of that total yearly average per month, right?
Correct.
Okay, so the difference between L1 and L3 for the employee is 0.25%, so 1% for life versus 1.25% for life. Just in case anybody's wondering what.
Yeah.
So like, so
Yeah, the
for
tier
instance, let's say,
difference.
just for easy numbers, let's say Mark makes $100,000 average. It's probably not true, but let's just say
Bring it on.
For easy numbers.
just for easy numbers, let's say Mark's averages out to 100, his best 3 years out of his last 5 averages to $100,000. So his 1% of $100,000 is $1,000, or is that 10,000? I don't know, do math, but
1% be
the
1,000.
1%, so he would get $1,000 a month for the rest of his life after age 60. That would be his pension based on those figures. If it was L3, he would get $1,250 a month for the rest of his life. So it's pretty significant difference for the employee and the employee's family. In my opinion, it's a significant difference without much cost.
Right.
And if it, my opinion of this is that we should go with L3, we can afford it. And it's better for retention, it's better for recruitment. and our employees deserve it, quite frankly, so.
But, and I think the last water project that we all watched, I think is a very good demonstration of the quality of staff and the talent that we have in our city, that I would love to be able to retain. And I know that, you know, private sector has reached out to a few of the employees trying to lure them away. And so I don't wanna lose anybody, you know, cause we run pretty thin as it is. And so to lose any staff, would be difficult, and especially trying to replace them during this time, so.
So it's yeah, and I guess the question is, and I know we talked about this a little bit in the finance committee meeting, but, it's just gonna come down to whether we have it in our budget, and I think we do have it, the availability in our budget. It's, the difference between L1 and L3 is $13,000 a year, basically.
$1,100 a month.
Cost to the city.
Yes.
For all of the employees in the city,
Correct.
for them to benefit an extra, you know, $2,000 to $3,000 a year for the rest of their lives after they've served us their entire careers.
Is that the only
So-
options?
We can go up from there.
At a later date, we can improve it
Absolutely.
upon it?
Usually what you do is, and the way it works is that once you make your initial choice, then either a year or two later, then you can choose to go up, and you can also choose to go down. When I was with the county, Cass County, they had loggers and they were at the L6 level, and when they had a lot of budget constraints, they dropped all the way down to L1 in order to save money. And so, I mean, there is flexibility.
So we can change that. I guess what I'm asking is, when does that affect the employee?
Immediately.
So so you can go from having the potential of that 6% retirement kickback to all of a sudden, now you got 1%.
Well,
kickback.
L6 is 2%.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
it's kinda
I'm
confusing,
sorry.
but-
Yeah.
It's a
yeah.
formula.
Yes.
And I
I'm
just
sorry,
realized,
I don't know nothing about loggers, but
Yeah.
I'm just asking, so you can lose that as an employee? You can't
Well,
retain that
so it,
if you've
well,
put so much
There's,
time
then
in
there's,
there
then
on
there's
that?
mathematical calculations, because a certain amount of it was earned at one level, a certain amount is earned at a different level. And so actuaries get in and make
Okay,
those numbers.
okay.
and another option too is I believe L6, they're different levels have different abilities. So like, I think L6 is has the option for employee contribution. So you have your employer contribution plus your employee. That's what I am on, is L6. And so I pay a percentage into my own pension, and my employer pays the
Right.
brunt of it. But that was an option that we took when it came for us to move up to L6. It was presented to us that if you're willing to contribute a little bit, then, you know, we'll move you up to L6.
Okay.
So the benefit over time is, so
I
there's lots of,
I didn't want us to be at an L3
No,
and then
you-
drop to L1 and these guys lose their L3 abilities or.
no, and also I think
You know what I'm
I think I misstated earlier. I think the payments are bi-monthly, not monthly. So I think it's
That makes more sense. with
based on the
you
numbers.
have.
Yeah, but the numbers that I said, $1,000 a month, based on it would actually $2,000 a month. I think, because I think it's bi-monthly payments. I think
So two.
I could be wrong, but I think.
And so
But-
the way the process would work is that we choose to move forward. There has to be a 45-day public review of our documentation. And so I've already posted it on the website, but if the board wants to move forward, today would start that 45-day review. And so once that period elapses, then you can choose to move forward. So tonight, we're not making any decisions other than to start that 45-day window that we are considering this.
Okay.
And so at our next meeting, like originally, we were gonna have a representative of loggers join us because of the change. They are willing to come back at our next meeting and answer a lot of those more in-depth questions that we would have.
Okay.
And
All
that
right.
gives our employees an opportunity to look at it and
Absolutely.
bring their questions.
So
Well, most employees are 100% on board. They've wanted it for quite some time.
So the resolution is ambiguous in what level of loggers we pick. We don't have to commit to a level of loggers
That is,
at this point.
the resolution is just to start the 45-day public view. That's kind of the starting point of the whole loggers process. And then, because eventually we'll have to do an ordinance that we are officially adopting, and then we'll have to make our selections of, okay, we're gonna come in at this level, we're gonna have this, that's when you have to make all those decisions, not tonight.
So we make a motion tonight to allow you.
So actually, I have a resolution in the packet.
Page,
Actually, Mr. Mayor, if you.
page 172.
Yeah, there's a bunch of loggers pages here.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, page 172 is the resolution.
Yeah.
Some great reading material if you wanna read through all 81 pages of the logger stuff.
I started stealing pretty early. 2 fingers, swipe down, 2 fingers. There you go.
Page what?
172. You can use your scroll bar on the right.
That's what I was getting ready to, and then I got cut off by the mayor there.
Or you can
It's a lot faster.
buy a mouse on Amazon,
Like-
it's $13.
Petting your pet hamster at home, Jeremy.
Just the two fingers.
Mr.
Are
Mayor,
you there yet?
You have the hard copy if you
I
want.
went too fast.
Here.
I went too fast. It says can't load it fast enough. Slow your fingers down. I'm good.
And you can do it by title only, sir, if you choose the resolution.
Make a motion.
Okay. Make a motion that we consider a resolution of the Adrian Board of Alderman, bill number 2308, resolution 1158. A resolution of the city of Adrian, Missouri, initiated the 45-day public information period prior to the electing of membership in the Missouri Local Government Employees Retirement System loggers.
Second.
And if we could do it by roll call, even though we do not have to.
Could you second reading?
Nope, this is a resolution, so we only have to do it
Gotcha,
once.
Got it?
Yep.
Okay, roll call. Alderman Vic,
Yes.
Alderman Hummel,
Yes.
Alderman Bridges,
Yay.
Alderman Sears.
On behalf of the city staff, we want to thank you for the consideration and for starting the process.
You're welcome.
Yes, most definitely, it's been something that's a long time coming.
We got some reading to do, fellas.
And I do remember the time they came in here, and I think you guys wanted it, and they said, we don't have the money. That's what they told us. Remember that? I mean, I remember sitting there, it was a huge kind of deal that day. So,
Yeah.
it was a huge.
We never had the money.
I don't think they realized till everybody left.
And
we
just
left
for
that sitting there.
clarification, well, and we'll talk about it during the budget. So,
All right, moving on to the fun part.
We're not having fun yet?
Just wait, you thought you were having fun.
Stop me when it gets too fun.
Where you guys going?
We got a call.
He called his own,
Can I request a 3-minute recess?
he called his own.
Absolutely. How about a 5-minute recess?
He probably called it his own report. Get me out.
Are we ready to go back in session from the break? Not that we was out of session. All right, first, before we get going, I do want to mention on the record that our 20 and 21 and eventually 22 audit reports and future reports will be found on our website at cityofadrianmo.org. If anybody wants to look them up for themselves, check that out.
And all of the loggers information is also on our website. And it is under the government section, under financial reports and budgets, and there's the loggers public information period. And if you click on that, that pulls that information up.
All right,
Here we go.
24 budget prep.
So, gentlemen, I met with all of our department heads as well as the park board. Everybody had input into the budget. I then went out and looked at our revenue sources, and what I did is I took our actual revenues that were coming in, and then I added 2% to them, very modest growth to determine some of our numbers. So if you, the first page is a single page, the 2024 budget preparation fund summary. That just shows between the general fund, the water fund, the current proposed budget is 3.3 million. The majority of that on the expense side, because our current budget that we're under now is about 2.2 million. And so there's about $1 million extra there. It's a $300,000 sewer project, the one that we were looking for ARPA funding and we didn't get. That's actually in the budget to do. There's $300,000 worth of road projects, $200,000 outer road, then $100,000, and hopefully with the arterials. There's about $150,000 to $200,000 worth of projects out at the water plant, maybe changing the membranes out, some of those other things, which now there's a possibility with the cooperation with Honeywell that maybe we can actually get some of that funded through an energy savings project, and so it won't have the budget impact. So those are the major increases. There's actually only a small transfer, a moderately small transfer from savings. Most of what we're doing is actually either funded through the increase in revenues that we received and the savings or the interest that we're earning on our investments. So that accounted for $200,000 back into the budget. And so, not sure how you guys want to go through this. What we did for the finance committee is just share the information that I just shared, and then they had questions. We can do line by line.
What do you suggest? I mean, as far as you wanna highlight, you got some highlights you wanna look at?
So with the revenues, I feel very comfortable with the revenues. Now, the one question that I sort of already asked in regards to animal licenses. So in our current budget, animal licenses only account for $10. And so our ordinance is kind of vague as to how often it needs to be done. To whether you do it one time per animal or do you do it every single year to show that you have vaccinated the animals within your city. So we need to clarify that. Any particular feeling?
I was leased on it once, it was once, you didn't have to do it every year, that's been a while back. But I don't know that people do every year, have to go up and get new tags, renew your dog license every year, I think that's kind of.
I know in Raymore and Belton, it's an every year deal.
Yeah, I don't know that I wanna ask the citizens to have to come pay a fee every single year to get a license for every pet that they have. I feel like that's a little bit overreach.
Okay.
Personally.
Is the pay a fee need to be tied to keeping their rabies vaccinations up to date?
Well, and that's kind of the philosophy, is that if you require them to have a tag every year, one of the requirements of the tag is to bring in proof of current vaccinations. And so that's one way to make sure that people are being good pet owners and are getting their pets vaccinated on a regular basis. The other philosophy is that if you have them go through that process every year, it does generate revenue, which then offsets the cost to animal control within your city. So it's supposed to be a kind of a revenue generation to offset that expense. And so that's typically the communities that do it every year, that's the philosophy.
I think we've got bigger fish to fry
How often
at
do
this point.
dogs get vaccinated for rabies?
Every
It's
year.
not, is it yearly?
Well, I think there are some that last 2 years.
I thought it was longer than that, I thought it was, okay.
I only know because we just took ours and it was a heck of a lot of money.
Well, I'm
Yeah,
not
I
in
take mine every
compliance,
year.
I'll just tell you, I'm not in compliance, so.
Well, I don't know about dogs, but I'm pretty sure our cats every other year.
Well, we've had people in our household, I don't know, tax sounds harsh, but attacked by dogs and bit, and one time, we talked to the sheriff's deputy, and they just had to come back and check on the dog to make sure it wasn't rabied, and that.
Do they quarantine the dog?
Those people, well, at their own house, and so that dog eventually disappeared. Like, I think they said it didn't have rabies, but then the dog was gone. And the other one, we just called and talked to the guy, and he assured us that they just adopted it from a shelter and it had its shots. It was really frustrating that we just had to guess and hope that these kids didn't get rabies from somebody's loose dog.
And the treatment for it is excruciating, because from my understanding, you have to get injections through your belly button. So.
So like
I guess in my experience, I'm kind of crabby with loose dogs, and
yeah, I mean, look at it on the surface, it seems like it should be a trivial issue, but it's an issue that's gonna be personal to the citizens. And I think that we have a responsibility to balance, good stewardship with also still allowing citizens to be free citizens. And I don't wanna get into a political dissertation about that, but like I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, everything we do, we need to be careful about just putting out more rules every time we meet, because eventually, we become the eye in the sky.
Well, and you don't have to limit it just to 1 year or once a lifetime either. You could do it every 5 years or.
What is our protocol right now? Okay, we pick up a dog,
They don't know.
but we don't have anything,
Well, as far as licensing, it's very vague. Here's the challenge, and this has just been from my experience since I've been here. The animals that we do pick up, most of them don't have collars, so they don't identify who the owner is, the address of there's nothing. If there was a way for us, if I find a dog, my first inclination is, what can I do to get that dog back home?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to fine anybody. That's not my intent. My intent is just to get it back home. Well, if there's no collar, no tag, no anything, unfortunately, we're very limited on what we can do. So then it sits here for the mandatory 7 days. And then after that 7 days, then we got to figure out how to get rid of it. Now, I don't like to dispose of animals. I'm a dog lover. So I try to find a shelter where they can go to. Unfortunately, we're very limited.
Yeah.
Now, the dog licensing is a conversation for another time. I just wanted to bring it up in scope of the budget. I did budget $200 for pet licenses this year, because I'm sure that there are people who have moved into town that have never licensed their pet. And again, it's not, and again, different schools of thought. The initial one for me is, hey, if it's licensed, I can go back and say, okay, whose dog is it, and get it back home.
Yeah. I'm in favor of that. I mean, I think, and I almost prefer to call it registration rather than licensing, but that's just me. But yeah, I don't know about every year. That's what
There's gonna be a learning curve, gotta be part of the conversation, and with our current staff, how enforceable is it? And so I think we need to iron out, get a few of our ducks in a row before we start getting too aggressive with it.
when along my lines is, my dogs get picked up, I come here and I get them, they haven't been registered or anything. Do we give them back to them without first you gotta register, then you gotta get your shots, or you can't get your dog back, or do we just let another dog back in the community without rabies shots? Do we let it back, go home? Those are things
that's all gotta be written
you
down
know,
somewhere.
yeah.
And I was thinking, I don't wanna spend too much time on this.
Well,
We're already
no, I
talking
got
about it now, but I was thinking, instead of having a yearly, licensing or registration, you could have something in writing that says, if you have a pet, you get it registered. If at any point there's a contact with that pet, a negative contact of any sort, either the pet's loose and, the dog catcher has to go get it, or the pet has, bites somebody and there's a police report involved, then the city could have the right to audit your veterinary records on that pet. And,
That's pretty deep.
and then, you know, and then you would have to comply before you got your pet
So a
back.
good dog owner wouldn't have to sweat it,
Right,
and a negligent
Yeah.
dog owner then wouldn't have to deal with it.
yeah, I feel like that'd be a fair balance. I mean, you're still gonna have instances where people aren't gonna do it, and there could be instances where, you know, a pet ends up with rabies and ends up loose on the street because they didn't take it to the vet every year, but you can't contain every single possibility of incident, you just can't.
Okay.
Anyway, but I do think you should put it in the budget so we can talk about it.
Well, like I said, I allowed $200 in the budget. This year there was only 10, so I am optimistic that we'll get a few more pets registered.
What page was that on? Are we going?
It was on two.
Yeah, it was on page 2. I was gonna say, most of our figures are actually based on the actuals. You can see like the Missouri general sales tax, currently we've received it in 204,000. I budgeted 185 because I think there was some carryover, some other things that didn't get reported quite accurately early in the year. But I am confident with the revenue numbers. Interest income, on the general side, sorry, I was just looking at it.
80,000?
Yes,
What page are you on?
Top of
178.
three, or three of the budget.
and then on the water, production side, the interest income was, 64,000. And so that went a long way to being able to do extra projects. And again, that was just the shift in where we had the money sitting. So probably the biggest difference that you wanna go over is probably, on the expense side. And like I said, on the salary side, I budgeted a 6% increase, across the board. 6%, and then the loggers L1 level, is what's factored in, which when I bring this back to you, if you so choose, do you wanna see what the L3 would look like, the budget impact?
I wanna see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so say that one more time, cause I'm looking at the salaries line,
Mhm.
and I'm also looking at the retirement. So where is the loggers?
So the loggers is in the retirement. And so because I didn't have specifics, basically, we had police and then we had everybody else. So that exact impact on the general side, or in budget, in Department 10, which is administration, probably isn't exact. Basically what I did is I took the liability and just spread it out. So that number won't be exact until we actually choose to join, and then they will give us what the liability is per employee, and then I can put it in the proper departments. Right now, it's accounted for in the budget, it's just not department specific at the moment, except for the police. The police is department specific. So in Department 20, their retirement, that is their actual number.
Okay, so help me out here, Ryan, I'm on page 3.
Page 3, okay?
I'm looking at retirement, which is the line item 55060, says 20,177
Yes,
annually.
yes.
And I was thinking, if I heard it right earlier, loggers would be 3362 a month.
Per L3.
Yeah, so this is,
Sorry,
That was L1.
that was L1, you're
so,
right.
so
What am I missing?
okay, so the 3362 is our entire liability for everybody that is not a police officer.
Okay, I'm with you.
So the total for the year is 40,353.
Okay, so,
And because I didn't have, they didn't send it to me based on employees, they sent it to me based on departments, police and everybody else. So what I did is, so for, under the 110-55060, I just took half of the 40,000 and put it there, so that I could account for it in the budget. And did not distribute it amongst the other departments, if that makes sense. I needed to account for the liability and the expense, so that the budget reflected the total number, but it's not exact, at the moment.
Alright, so is the rest of that 3362 somewhere else in the budget, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's, so there's a portion of it's in the police, a portion of it is in the water department. So basically, I spread it out amongst the departments, cause I didn't have an exact way to account for it, I just had to account for the total.
Okay, thank you.
The one thing you will notice is that there is a healthy increase in seminars and training. And you'll see in the administration department, the 110-65010, which is page 2, there's a $5,000 budget for training. That also applies to our board and our mayor. I would like to encourage you gentlemen to attend some training opportunities, ways to network with other officials of the cities, because I think there's a lot of benefit to that.
Would that include the conference in September?
Absolutely, yes. It also would include the
Riveting is the word you're looking for?
well, the title, the certified municipal official.
Right.
That would include that type of training, if you guys chose to partake.
Oh, you weren't gonna describe the training? just-
No. There's value in it.
I think there's
There's
value in
value,
it, that's, it's a PowerPoint of somebody
Yes.
talking about.
But I've included that across all departments.
How does it compare to the audit review?
Oh, it's a lot more
It's
exciting.
better than the other one.
You can handle it then.
It's a lot more exciting.
Death by PowerPoint.
Yeah. I mean, overall, the budget, it's straightforward, the budget is, like I said, the major increases are in the road projects, the sewer projects, and at the water plant. That's where the primary differences are.
And you're confident we've got revenue streams to cover that?
Absolutely, yes. And, the transfers from, our savings, go back to, on the general side, we're transferring in $254,000, and the majority of that is for the road projects. That's almost the outer road, project fee. And then, the ARPA grant funds, basically that $300,000 that we've already kind of expended, that we're just shifting its position, is gonna account for the sewer lines.
And I wanna make sure I heard you right earlier when you said, you anticipated a 6% increase in salary.
That's correct.
That was to cover loggers as well.
No.
That's just,
So the 6% is a salary increase. And a lot of municipalities around us did 10%, just because of the way inflation's been. What I did is I calculated it at 6%, and then with the loggers increase, I felt that was a very generous increase for the employees this year.
okay.
Do you see anything that sticks out to you that you have questions on?
I just wanna, can you, one more time, go through the steps here? We're at step 5, or step 4, which is, the board's, review of the preliminary budget.
Mm-hmm.
And then step 5 is what?
So our process, or the system allowed for multi-phase steps. And so where we're at now, so technically step 4, and I should have rolled it forward, and I apologize. Step 4 was the finance committee. And
Okay,
so-
that's right.
Yes.
Yeah, you told
So,
us that.
yes, so step 5 is where we're at now.
Okay.
I didn't roll it forward on this document, but we're at step 5. And so the next step would be to bring it before you in June. And then you would vote on it to adopt it, and then it would be adopted. So we don't really need a step 6. The system allows for 7 steps.
So this is a preliminary review, and then the next step would be like a ratification of
Yes.
the budget, okay.
Yeah. And we're supposed to have that done before July 1st, and so we will definitely have that done, on time. And so it's,
At the regular board meeting.
and so it's not a rush to get it done at the 11th hour. And so the next step, is once, I roll it forward, to step 5, I will publish it, online for public comment. And so anybody from the public can view it over the next month and, be at the next board meeting if they wanna comment on it.
So Jeremy, one more time, what were those significant increases and for which departments you see?
So, 300,000 in road projects. The 200,000 of it is the outer road. Another 100,000, for any of the major arterials. And then there's another 100,000 built into that budget for any other improvements, in the street, system. So there's almost 400,000 in streets for capital improvement. There's 300,000 in sewer. We basically have to do the southwest side, the southwest, west, and northwest side of the sewer. Need to use some cure-in-place piping to rehab the sewer there. That accounts for 300,000. There's $200,000 out at the water plant, between changing out membranes, and then just other improvements to the infrastructure of the plant. And I think those are the major ones.
Okay.
Are there other projects that you guys would like to see?
I have an idea.
Okay.
Can we run numbers on chip and seal between First Street and what's that, Wagner? On the north-south road there
Oh,
by the water
Yeah.
tower?
west of the,
Oh,
west of
what do you
the
mean?
Crystal Manor.
991 road.
Yeah, and possibly, maybe, from the end of Main Street to 8th Street on Cemetery Road,
Start figuring on that.
since those are part of our city.
Yeah, the city limits goes down the middle of the road.
Right,
We
right,
approach township about 4,
right,
and then they,
right.
but, Mountain Township, Mountain Township has half of First Street with a 4-way stop out to 18 as well.
Right.
So we've been maintaining that, so we try to get money out of Mountain to do that south piece.
Right.
They're like, oh, we don't have the money,
I think if we could look into that,
and we've already bumped Deer Creek on the outer road, so I don't know, this would be Deer Creek on Cemetery Road.
right, yeah,
And then we also, started to crunch numbers on that sidewalk improvement that you had mentioned.
right,
Ah, that was what I was just getting ready to ask.
So that project was, from the retirement.
at least
Yes.
from retirement down to the intersection, if
Yep.
not,
Yeah, we desperately need that.
yeah.
That makes me
Senior
nervous.
citizens going down.
So the numbers that we crunched on that was basically
From Houston Plaza to where?
Down to Casey's, basically.
Okay.
roughly for materials, about $10,000
Mm-hmm.
to do that project.
Yeah, I figured it'd be about right.
That's
Somewhere
4
wide.
foot wide, that's 4 foot wide.
Yeah.
We were kinda discussing, probably need at least 5, for if you're gonna have 2 of them chairs meet.
We get you some hard numbers. Yep. Are there other places that, like the auditor said, you know, the city is in a good financial position? And not that I encourage, you know, spending money,
Right, right, I understand.
but there are times, you know, it's one of those situations where you can kick the can down the road, but eventually the bill comes due.
Yeah,
And
we've
if you
done
kick
that
it,
way too long.
and if you kick it past where it should be, that bill that comes due is more expensive than had you done
Absolutely.
it earlier.
Cause ain't
So-
nothing going down.
Right.
And if it does, it's not a lot. And
And
it won't
so-
stay there forever.
What we can do, is over the next 30 days from this meeting till the next, if you identify projects that you wanna see, we can bring them back before,
Sure.
the board and then add them into the budget, going forward. Cause we have, there's $670,000, I think, in our capital improvement budget. There's another, I'll have to look at the number again, at least $500,000, I think, in streets. And so there is money there to make the improvements to the infrastructure of the city.
So-
And that's what it's there for.
And you said that you're already budgeting $100,000 for, unnamed
Yes.
street improvements.
Yes.
So if we had specific projects that we just talked to you about that, and you can crunch the numbers on them, and that can either be part of that 100,000, or we can adjust the budget accordingly, right? And you're
Absolutely.
saying we have room to adjust the budget if we need to.
Yes.
So on that capital improvement, does that, can any of that be used to, you know, raise some of the houses that if we just dozed them and got rid of them, can we use some of those funds?
Yes.
I can sign to that.
And I'm exploring some options for some of the houses that we've spoken about.
Okay.
And I'd like to turn some of it, if we could, into parkland, depending on how things work out.
We are such a pedestrian community, you know, you got the school right smack dab in the middle of everything. I think the more we can do for sidewalk improvement, replacement, upgrading of old ones, whatever we can do, that just bodes well for everybody's safety. We've got kids running all over the place all summer long.
Between Yost and Casey's, it's horrible to see kids walking on the road, there's no sidewalks. You know, you got kids out in the middle of the street, got people,
Yeah.
that's the worst part. Between Yost and there, when they leave school, they're heading down, there's tons of them walking down
Yeah,
the street.
everywhere down Old 71, from my road, which is the, Plainview, all the
Yeah.
way down to
Yeah,
all
there's
the way
no-
down to Casey's is
So
rough.
if there's ever grant funding available for, I just think it's a win-win for everybody if we can
So that,
make that happen.
there is some transportation money available that I will find out if we can use that for sidewalks, because that would be a great project spanning a few years, to improve the interconnection, of the system.
And we need to encourage, generally speaking, our citizens to take advantage of what we already have in place when it comes to pedestrian traffic.
I was gonna recommend after we get this budget approved in June or July, whichever one it is, I don't remember what he said, but,
Next month.
yeah, okay, June. That we go ahead and, we need to set up a strategic planning meeting, sometime this fall.
Yes, sir.
Like, work sessions outside of regular meeting times where we can sit and talk about stuff like this.
Right.
Freely, and not, where we're not trying to stick to an agenda. I'm not saying I'm mad because we're getting off the agenda, I'm just saying, there's a lot of stuff, really good ideas that we have and that our citizens have that we need to explore.
And I've had people talk to me about neighborhood parks that you just mentioned, cause we have a great park, but it's hard for a kid.
Yeah.
To get there.
So there are some opportunities in the works, so.
Excellent. Alright.
Just have one question?
Yep.
Okay, on the parks budget, you've got $9,914 for trash, 2023, current actual?
Yes.
That was 1,500, how did that happen?
All right, hang on. What page are you on?
I'm on page 11.
Page 11.
68030.
Okay.
I see 125,000.
For trash?
We'll see that, yeah, 68030. We went 1,500, and then we're at 9.
I think a bill, got miskeyed into that budget line.
Okay.
So like,
Well, and you got none requested for,
so the reason why there's none requested, so when I put out the RFP for trash service, one of the stipulations that I put in the contract is that the city's trash would be picked up for free. So there's no charge to the park, there's no charge, for the water plant, there's no charge, for the one over at the police, over at the fire department, and
More plant, public works.
Public Works.
Okay.
And so the city isn't charged for trash pickup. So it's a savings to all those departments.
okay.
But the overage, I think that was the community, pickup, it just got attributed to the parks budget, it didn't actually come out of park funds.
Okay,
It
that's
was
the
a-
only
it
thing
was
that
a
really
miskey.
caught my eye on here.
Yeah,
I was like,
it was,
whoa.
it was a miskey that needs to be
Okay,
corrected.
all good.
Yep. So are we comfortable with bringing the budget back with, a couple of variations?
Are we motioning anything on the budget tonight?
No.
Nothing?
No.
Okay.
Great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, wow. I'm gonna see numbers in my sleep tonight, man. Wow.
I can actually read it.
Yeah, I know what it means. Yeah, I can make heads or tails of
I
what we're
can
doing.
actually read it. That actually makes sense to my untrained eyes.
We weren't given 5 minutes to review it. and
Here,
prove it.
sign this.
Yeah.
Well, the amount of passive income that we've generated from moving to MOSIP is, impressive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Okay.
Are there any grants out there that you're working on right now that
So
might
there-
offset some of this stuff?
So there are a couple. Like I said, there's a transportation one that just came across, a couple days ago that I think we will have interest in. There's one for the parks, that's a $50,000 grant. And once I kind of have this off my plate, I can focus more on, because there's things that are, there's money that's left on the table all the time. Now, most of it is a dollar for dollar match, which, you know, there's no such thing as free money, but that comes a close second. And so there's a lot of opportunities out there. There's one, maybe even a CBDG grant, that'll be a dollar for dollar match, but that we can use for houses that might need to come down or that might need a little extra repair. I mean, we could have a community revitalization fund that we set up, you know, to where if people need help, they can apply through it. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can do, that once I have the time, I can start putting that stuff in place. All right. Next item.
Okay. Discuss ordinance number 750.
So,
which
yes.
on here is gonna be,
Page
Uh,
196.
yeah, 196.
So we have several ordinances that are in conflict with one another. When this ordinance was put into play, this actually made it permissible to burn trash within the city. Well, as we all know, the city now everyone has trash collection. So the need to burn trash is not there like it probably once was when this was created. The other issue is that when you burn trash, you produce odors, chemicals, you know, all sorts of things. And it is actually in conflict, direct conflict, with our building code, which is listed under section 9.1-2, in which it says that no property in the city can be used to create a nuisance. Says, no land or building in any district shall be used or occupied in such a manner to create any dangerous, injurious, noxious, or otherwise objectionable fire, explosive, or other hazards, including possible potential hazards, noise or vibration, smoke, dust odor, or other form of air pollution, heat, cold, dampness, electrical or other substances, condition, or elements, referred herein as dangerous or objectionable elements, in such a manner or in such amount as to adversely affect the surrounding area or adjoining premises, provided that any use permitted is not expressly prohibited by this ordinance. And so basically, if you're burning a fire and your neighbor objects to it, you are in violation. Now, with that said, the burning of trash, we definitely need to, we probably need to repeal this ordinance and put something in place. The other thing that I want to discuss, and I don't want to step on any toes, but the burning of leaves in ditches. I know that's a very popular thing here, and I don't think it ever gets out of control to where it was gonna cause, you know, widespread fire. The challenge that we see and that we have to deal with is that people burn leaves in ditches they don't clean them up, and then it washes into our storm systems, and it clogs, and then we have to deal with that, because there's, you know, backup, you know, the water starts to run over the roads, because, you know, the water can't discharge properly. So, I don't know if we wanna address that within this ordinance, as we move forward. Again, this is kind of just a discussion, because these things have kind of hit here recently.
My feelings are that 90% of my leaves get burned up in the ditch, maybe 10% go down the drain. I mean, I gotta live by that when I get, I mean, honestly, you can look at mine, you can see exactly where the burn line is. I burn it all the way down, I fill it up. I have a 100-year-old oak tree in my front yard. Fills it about 3 times a year with leaves. I just blow them all into the ditch and light it up. Now, if we didn't have the burning there, I don't know that I'd pay so much attention to it, to be quite honest.
Well, I was gonna say, if I didn't burn mine, they would clog the ditches a lot worse than they do,
Yeah, that's
because
what-
I burn them,
Yeah,
unless I haul them off.
Right.
Which, you know, that's what a lot of cities make their citizens do.
Put 'em in the bags
I'm
and-
personally not inclined to make our citizens do that, but,
Well, if we were gonna have them haul off, what the city would offer, you know, the citizens put them in the paper.
Big paper bag.
Brown
Yeah, the
biodegradable,
brown
yeah.
bags. We would burn it at the
Our
lagoon.
facility.
Mhm. And get a permit, and then we would burn it together. That way, it doesn't clog up the system. So that would be the alternative. But I know that this is a passionate issue for people, and so.
well, we have a problem with people keeping their ditches clean in
Period.
general.
Right.
And burning leaves isn't the problem, it's
Right.
one of the problems, but, you know, I work pretty hard to, I mean, I do burn my leaves in my ditches, but I work pretty hard to keep them clean afterwards. I even plant new grass seed in the spring, and like, you know, try to get them to, but I know everybody doesn't do that. And we do probably need something in place, but we need more than that, I guess is what I'm saying, is something needs to be in place, if it's not already, about the citizens' responsibility to keep up the right of ways and the ditches, because we've got some ditches around here that are bad out of control. And I'm talking with brush and weeds and, you know, that's something I was actually thinking about the other day, like we need to talk about doing something about that. So whether it be, I mean, we can still address the burning, we do need to address the burning ordinance, and
I don't think leaves is the biggest issue of mine, like the
Yeah.
Regina's corner there. I always have to every year pull a tire out of there. Last time it was a huge cardboard box, it was one of those real firm cardboard box. It clogged the whole thing, the whole street was backing up. It had nothing to do with leaves, it really didn't, it was something else, but it was trash. It was trash that someone had thrown in the.
Or got blown in there.
Yeah, or blown or whatever, but really the leaves that's not what I dig out. It's usually some object that's just clogged everything up. It's usually not.
And we can separate those issues.
Yeah.
yeah, and I guess that's what, like, my concern is, I don't wanna, if burning is an issue, then let's address burning, let's not use the ditches as a scapegoat. I'm not saying you are, I'm just saying that's the way it can come across,
Right.
because I know that that's not the problem with the ditches, we got lots of problems
Sure.
with the ditches. So if we're gonna address the burning, let's address the burning, and let's do it openly and honestly. And then let's address the ditches, and let's do it openly and honestly. Let's not use one, to piggyback on the other, but that's just my opinion about it. They both need to be addressed.
So in addition to the ditches issue, do we have other problems with burning, I mean, outside of just, I mean, we burn cardboard boxes in the backyard just because we do that, and I can stop that, no big deal, is that, do we have people burning like trash?
We
Yes,
did 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It was horrible. You could smell the whole town smelling rubber.
Yeah, the EPA actually got involved in
They
that.
were burning 5-gallon buckets and all kinds of rubber buckets. We had tires, you had all kinds of stuff in that pile.
Yeah, if we're gonna be burning, it's gotta be Class A materials only, no building products, you know, I mean, I'm all for that,
Yeah.
you know.
And Gary brought it up a long time ago that, you know, something to have a guy with a hose. If you're gonna be out there burning, you have to have a water supply near you. You just
15
can't-
feet away from any
Whatever, yeah,
residence.
Gary brought that up, that's
yeah.
not in our deal either, cause
Right.
there, he goes, lots of people, it can get out of control real quick, all it takes a good wind and you're,
Yeah.
if you gotta race inside and hook the hose up and do all that, you should already have that done. That's, Gary used to come in and always, that was definitely something he wanted to have.
Yeah, we definitely need this.
So I will propose some language and submit it for comment
Class A would be your leaves and limbs.
Class A is anything that originates from wood or vegetation, basically, so paper, cardboard, that's
Cut
all Class
grass.
A. What, any kind of, technically, any kind of lumber is Class A, but you would specify, I would think that you
Treated
can't.
lumber from
Yeah,
railroad ties
well,
to.
I would, if I were writing it, if it were totally up to me, I would not allow any building products to be burned in town. So, because
Folks
it's
can
just,
still have bonfires in their backyards and things like that.
Well,
Yeah.
and that would be
Yeah.
actually a listed
Recreational.
thing that they could actually, is a permissible use.
Yeah.
Bonfires, fire pits.
and I don't know that I wanna go so far as like, you know, in Raytown, it's, you have to have a UL approved burn pit, and I don't wanna do that.
No,
That's,
but we could use
you know.
55-gallon steel drums, maybe if we wanted to burn leaves or twigs or cardboard boxes.
Yeah. Just don't throw your household trash in there, like,
Right.
that used to be
Right.
the thing here.
That
in this
used to
town.
be the
Used to be the
thing,
thing, you
yeah.
just go outside and
Yeah.
burn your trash.
yeah, that can't,
Yeah, it's horrible.
we shouldn't be doing that.
No, especially if the citizens are already paying for a trash service.
Right.
And they already got green bins.
Burn it, burn it there.
Lee's done about everything he can.
Go ahead and
Make it work.
use what you can. All right,
I'll come up with
Sounds
some
good.
language and.
I'll say I can give you
Please.
Raytowns
That-
if you wanna look at it. I could tell you Raytowns by memory, but go out every day.
all right, moving on. Appointment of Planning and Zoning Commission. Finally got 9 members.
Thank you, Matt.
One of these may be coming off in the next couple months, but I'll look for a replacement. But for now, everything's legal there with those 9.
And after further conversation with the attorneys, the agreement for the trailer, or for the travel trailer to be on the site during the building, we'll actually have to go through the Planning and Zoning Commission to get approval. So,
Okay.
So they'll have something to do straight away.
Yes.
Length of term on these, Matt?
Well, it's the same as the other one, so
well, she can be there for 30 days, so it's.
they'll
she's okay.
draw
Okay.
for it. 3 of them will get 3 years, 3 of them get 2 years, 3 of them get a year.
And then 3 years after that.
And
New,
then-
new people get 3 years.
I make a motion that we accept the members as listed to serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission Board.
Matt, I only know about half these, but you
Well, I can tell you real
stand,
fast.
well, I'm just saying, you say it's a good list.
Well, it's a well-rounded list.
I don't wanna ask you who's rounded and who's not.
Do you have any questions about any of the names that you don't know? And I can explain them to you.
I don't need to know that. I don't think. Does everybody else know everybody on that list? Or is it
Most
just
of
me?
them.
Yeah, for the most part.
See, there's
1, 2,
there's 3
3,
Plainview Drive people on here. So,
Oh, that could be
I'm
a-
feeling
that could
strong,
be
my
in
road's coming in strong.
Really? There's 3
I
on
don't
there?
know.
Well, Tim Sterner doesn't technically live on
He
Plainview
lives on
Drive, but
8th Street.
Shauna does. So he
And
pretty
their
much
code
does.
must have changed since I've been there.
You think they won't kill each other, huh?
It's Bob's old house, Bob's house.
No, I think the big,
You remember
Down the
Bob?
corner?
I think this is a good list of,
I
the,
second
It's
it.
well diversified, I mean, it's a lot different. I don't see too many huge landowners.
David's Brownsburger, if you guys don't know him, he's the one that bought Herschel Cole's place.
And he brings a level of
He's a
construction
contractor.
experience.
Yeah,
That's, yeah, very good.
Yep. And Bart Taylor obviously is
Mhm.
well-rounded in that. But,
The only person I see that owns a lot of vacant property would be Ella, and that just happened. I mean, she's the only one that owns a lot of land, that's just sitting there. I don't see anybody else's.
Motion made and seconded?
all in favor?
Alright,
Thank you, guys.
Alright. Getting close to
Quiet
that.
zone discussion, this is something that I brought up to, West Code about the train. If we qualified for them not to blow their horn through town at night, and tell us the rest of that.
So I reached out to, the Federal Railroad Administration and talked with a gentleman. And when we looked at this before, there were a certain amount of improvements that would have had to been done. in order to qualify for a quiet zone. Basically, you have to make each one of your intersections where there's, a railroad crossing to where somebody can't get around the barricades. When we plug the numbers in, there's a formula and a calculation to where, you know, the number of trains that run through per day, you know, everything that factors in. Right now, we actually are under the threshold that requires any improvement to any of our intersections. So we can actually qualify as a quiet zone. Now, the caveat to that is if they don't blow their horns, they don't blow their horns.
Day or night, any
Day or night, that's correct. Now, if somebody's on the track, naturally, you know, they're gonna blow their horn.
emergency stuff.
But when they come through town, they will not sound the horn going through the crossings. They will rely on the arms and the lights and the bells. And so there is a process in order to qualify for it. You have to go through public hearings. It takes a while. Nevada is actually going through the process right now to qualify for a quiet zone. And so basically this is before you to see if this is something that you want us to pursue and start that process.
Are they required to reduce their speed at all
Yeah.
from where it is right now, or?
No, it's a standard across the board.
It just can't be from 11 at night till 6 in the morning. It has to be day or night, it has to be both.
Yeah, it's an all or
It's
nothing.
all or nothing.
The speed reduction thing is something across the board
Yeah.
for the Federal Railroad Administration.
Right.
Whenever they come
I didn't
into
ask my question good. So if we were to go to a quiet zone, would there be an additional decrease in their speed required?
This is only to deal with horns,
Okay.
sounding of the horns.
Gotcha.
What of our unprotected our unprotected railroad crossings? Is that,
We don't have it.
We don't have any.
we don't have any?
They're either shut down or we have railroad crossing signals and arms on
Used
every
to have
one.
it too,
Shows how
right?
much attention I pay.
There's actually 4
Yeah.
through
Well, I
town.
was thinking 8th Street didn't have one, but it has an arm?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's okay.
8th Street,
Sir,
5th
I
Street,
had to
8th
go
Street,
look
First
myself.
Street.
I had to go
all the
look.
time.
Yeah.
8th and First was the only ones I was thinking about.
Main Street
Yeah.
and
I didn't
this
think
one
of
right
Main
here.
Street.
Fifth
Yeah.
Street.
I'm in favor of it.
Absolutely.
I don't ever
It don't
notice.
bother some people,
Yeah,
but
it
It'll
don't
probably
bother
make
me.
somebody mad.
no, they don't blow their horn.
Yeah, I'm sure it will.
Well, how are my kids at recess gonna
Well, they
know to
can
go
run
look
from
and
there
watch the
then.
horns?
How do they know
See
when it's
the
time to
trains
let the
go by?
dog back in? How do they know it's time to let the dog back in when they hear the horn, you know?
I was gonna say, they will see my dogs all
Is
I
that,
do too.
is there any financial obligation to look into this at all? No, I mean, then why not look into it?
Yeah, and people could be made aware, and if they wanna speak up about it, then
Right.
we sure
Yeah,
should
because
go.
we will have to have public meetings and do that whole deal. This is basically just to see if you guys wanna start that process, start down that road.
Yeah, I'm kinda split about it, or right off the cuff, I'm not sure how I feel about it, so.
I'd be interested to see if there's any public that would come in and talk about it. I mean,
Strongly one way or the other.
I live far enough away, it doesn't bother me unless I just happen to be up at that time. So,
It would bother me more if somebody got ran over by a train, I'll tell you that,
yeah, your little house, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel it rattling, I'm sure.
but yeah,
You know, so for example, you know, if there was a malfunction of the crossing arms, they would sound their horn. I mean, you know, but outside of that,
If everything's working the way it should be,
yeah, it'll just be quiet. Basically it'll be like the way it used to be before, because this law where they sounded their horn, it hasn't been around for a tremendously long time.
And we need to keep in mind that the crossing bells, I mean, that noise is still taking place.
Yes.
You know, so we still have all of the regular warnings that we have right now, and, trains aren't quiet.
no,
I don't hear the bells.
you guys all in favor of moving forward
Yep.
Yeah.
with this?
Do some research.
yeah,
I will bring that back before you.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Nothing on public comments?
We do have a reason to go into executive session.
So I know we just voted for us, but back to the question you asked, and I was gonna go there, page 201, last paragraph, or second line, establishing a quiet zone. Communities have the option to establish partial quiet zones restricting horn usage from 10 PM to 7 AM. So just And maybe that,
I just think during the day, there's more distractions for people. You got phones, you got your
Maybe that's
stereo,
what we
you got maybe
pursue.
during the day, you might wanna hear one
Well,
at night, to me.
what do you do with a deaf person? I mean,
Oh, I
they still have to depend on the lights and the crossings too, so.
They're used to being deaf, honestly.
I think it's just
I
being in
mean-
your house in the daytime, it's not gonna bother you, as opposed when you're in your house at 3 o'clock in the morning and it's gonna.
Right. Or 11 o'clock at night when it always comes through town, right when I'm trying to go to bed.
I'm already sound asleep.
I'm hoping I'm
You go to bed earlier.
I can't, it'll wake me up.
and it through.
It wakes me up when I hear the rumble and the gear and the speed start dropping over there at Crescent Hill. Anyways, that's just my problem, but.
So, sorry guys, just throw that.
Okay, move.
I'll get more
Yeah,
information
good
on it.
catch on
Okay.
that.
Moving on.
Alright. Alright, I'd like to make a motion, we go into executive session. So we gotta close this, right?
Well, did you guys have any
I'm sorry.
mayor or alderman communication?
Keep up the good work, seriously.
Yeah, thank you for that's a lot of heavy lifting, thank you.
So do I make a motion to close and then open, or just an open? Just to close.
Just move.
Yeah, just.
Okay, I make a motion that we go into executive session, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Roll call.
Alderman